Warning, the podcast that you're listening to right now is being recorded live inside of a haunted location. Tonight, we're at the notoriously haunted Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. If you're frightened easily, I recommend you turn this off now, because we have captured paranormal activity during these podcasts, and in a place like this, I wouldn't be surprised if we captured some tonight. If you're still with us, please feel free to send any evidence that you feel like you hear in this podcast to paranormalfilespodcast@gmail.com. Because if you do hear any EVPs or spirit voices, we would love to hear from you, and we're going to include them in an episode at the end of this season. Anyways, now that we got that out of the way, welcome to the Paranormal Files official podcast. Hey, everybody online. By the way, if you're just listening to this, there is a video version of the podcast available on our YouTube channel at the Paranormal Files official podcast. You can go see the actual video version of what's happening right now. We're sitting in the notoriously haunted Ohio State Reformatory. This is a huge building. I mean, like, the echo of my voice when I finish talking just lasts for seconds. We're in a very large building right now. To those of you who are watching the actual video broadcast, you'll be able to see kind of where we're at. We're in the center of a cell block right now, and I'm just going to skip the introduction this time and hop right into the podcast. I'm being joined tonight by Greg, who has worked here for many years, running a lot of the paranormal tours and overseeing the kind of ghostly side of the reformatory. So I'm going to allow him to introduce himself to you guys, and we're going to start this off.
All right. Thanks, Colin. I got a frog in my throat there. Yeah, this place is haunted, so it messes with you. My name's Greg Vaketic. I'm the lead paranormal investigator here at the Ohio State Reformatory. I've been volunteering here since 2013, and I've been leading the private ghost hunts for the last couple years.
So you are the guy to talk to about the ghosts here.
That's what they tell me.
And
Yes.
Seeing from what's already happened tonight, it seems to be true, because we heard something earlier in a different part of the reformatory than the area that we're in now, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first off, Greg, can I have you tell everybody a little bit about the history of the building that we're in right now? You can be as descriptive as you'd like.
Okay, sure. The Ohio State Reformatory was constructed between 1886 and 1896 when the first 150 inmates arrived. They were put to work building the east cell block and the 25-foot wall that would surround the complex. We are in the west cell block right now, which was one of the ones that was completed in 1896. The east cell block was finished in 1910. At the time, it was a reformatory. It was like a boys' school for young, nonviolent, first-time offenders, ages anywhere from like 13, 14, 15, all the way up to 30. And it wasn't technically a prison. It was built as a reformatory. There are cells here, but they only spent 8 hours a day or a night in their cells, and that was for sleeping. The other 16 hours were going to school, learning a trade, and going to church. But as the years progressed, this slowly started turning into a maximum security prison, and by the early 1970s, it was a full-fledged maximum security prison. At that time, inmates spent 23 hours a day in their cells and only 1 hour out.
Wow.
And the cells aren't that big.
No, they're not.
No. And, this was originally built for one inmate to a cell. And at times, for overcrowding, same thing nowadays, they had to put 2 to 3 in a cell. And this is not a prison like today, where they're like pods and dorms. These were actually jail cells. The east side were 8 feet by 5.5 feet. The west side, a little bit bigger, 8 feet by 7 feet. But not a very big area for 2 guys to spend 23 hours a day in them.
Not at all. And so, how did the prison come to be abandoned? I don't want to call it a prison, even though it was for a while, but...
Well, when this turned into a maximum security prison, they were spending all that time in their cells. And the inmates filed a petition with the state saying it was cruel and inhuman punishment. Well, eventually the state agreed with them and built them a new prison, which is a little bit northwest of here. I mean, you can see it from here. And the last inmates left here December 31st, 1990, and then it was abandoned. Until Shawshank Redemption.
Yep.
I believe it was 1993 when the Shawshank filmed here. And at that time, there were still the support buildings here. There was the wall that was still here. So when you watch the movie, you see all those buildings behind the main prison. After they were done filming, the state came in and started tearing down the wall and all those support buildings.
What?
We just had a flashlight turn on and then something looked like it went around the corner.
Wait, what?
I had a flashlight sitting over there. It turned on and then something went around the corner.
We heard something and the flashlight went off
It's sitting right here.
So the flashlight turned on,
by itself. It's just sitting over there.
and then you saw something.
We were
I
watching.
saw something go around the corner over there really quick.
Oh,
Now it just went off.
oh my God. The warning was real.
Yeah, well, it is. This place is extremely active.
Yeah. So to fill people in on what just happened, we've got the rest of our upcoming guests sitting to the left of the table that we're at. For everybody that's watching, they're over here, sadly, the opposite direction that we're filming. But they just saw a flashlight that no one is holding, that was just laying there, turn on by itself. And then somebody saw something move around the corner and kind of walk away. And then the flashlight turned off again, right?
Yes.
And they interrupted our Shawshank talk because that was crazy.
Yeah. Huh?
Yeah. What?
It's on.
Hold up.
There it is. Okay, there's movement down there.
Now it just went off. Did you get it? That one comes on out.
Yeah, that one comes on.
That one's normal. This isn't.
And where's the movement you guys hear?
Yeah. I was hearing something. He felt something.
Yeah, I turned around just instinctively. I didn't know, I didn't see the light though.
Obviously, someone's
Yeah.
interested in your conversation.
Yeah.
You know what? I just wait a minute.
Yeah. Back
All the
there.
way down at, oh yeah, wait a minute. No, what is that? Oh, never mind. I see a red light, but I think that's a reflection.
That's probably a reflection, but there was movement down there. We seen it. I heard it.
Wait a minute, that red light just went off. Now it came back on, so it must be your, let's see. It just went off. Hey, Naomi,
Yeah.
look over here. It's between the bars. Do you see the,
Yeah, that's like a reflection from us.
okay, because it keeps going on and off when
Yeah,
nobody's
that's-
moving.
That's from this right here. So look, watch. Is it?
All right,
I think
keep
it's
going.
in front of it.
All right, wait, stay right there. 'Cause- No, it just went off, and you're not moving. It's back on.
It's gotta be one of these.
Look at it.
Oh, the light's on.
Okay, it's just gonna keep going.
The flashlight's
Yeah.
on.
Okay. We gotta get back.
Yeah,
to
yeah, okay, let's- All right, here we are back.
Okay. Sorry, guys. So I just got that flashlight turning on and off on camera. If you guys want to go watch that, it's on our YouTube channel. If you're listening, I highly recommend you check that out because that was a crazy little moment. But let's get back into the podcast mindset. Got to calm down a little bit. So we were talking about Shawshank filming here, and that kind of revitalized interest in the building, would you say?
Yeah, I think it probably saved the building. Like I said, after they wrapped up filming, the state came in and started tearing down the support buildings and the outer wall. Residents of the city of Mansfield didn't want to see the prison torn down. So they got together, formed the Mansfield Reformatory Preservation Society, and they basically saved it by buying it at auction from the state for $1.
$1.
Yep.
That's a good price.
Oh yeah. I mean, the state didn't want to deal with it anymore. You know, it was probably a headache on their part, so they were more than happy to get rid of it.
What was that?
I just heard that.
That was loud.
That's where was that coming from?
Down there.
Yeah, I thought it was down there.
Oh,
And there's nobody in the building but us five.
Just us.
yeah, I want to tell people this is a huge building. It's absolutely massive, but we're the only 5 people in here, and we're all standing right here. Hello? Okay.
We may not get this done. We keep getting interrupted.
No, come on. Okay, so can we talk about the negative history of this building, the kind of deaths that have happened here, the notable, accidents and incidents that have
Right.
occurred in this?
Right. Now, there were no executions here, but there were, about 200 deaths here. Some of them accidental, murders, suicides. One of the accidental deaths occurred in the East Admin up on the 2nd floor back in 1950. There was a woman by the name of Helen Gladke. Her husband, Art Gladke, was the superintendent. He was superintendent here from like 1935 to 1959. Well, on this Sunday morning in 1950, she was in her closet in her bedroom. Now, for those that don't know, superintendents and assistant superintendents used to live here on site in the front of the building. So that Sunday morning, she was in her closet reaching up for a box. She did not know it, but her husband's handgun was on top of the box at the time. It fell, discharged, and struck her in the lung. She did not die here. She died a few days later of complications from pneumonia at a local hospital. But Helen's still here with us. 1959, her husband, Art Gladke, suffered a fatal heart attack while working in his office on the 1st floor. Art's still here. Back in 1932, there was a guard by the name of Frank Hanger who was bludgeoned to death in the area of Solitary. Frank is still here. There's been people that have seen his shadow in the Solitary. I've had experiences down there. People get EVPs. People will hear boots walking around. So Frank's still here. 1960, there was an inmate up on the 4th tier named James Lockhart. Unlucky cell number 13. He was denied parole, became despondent, took some flammable fluid from one of the shops, went into his cell, and shut the door and set himself on fire, committed suicide in his cell. James is still there. There are other inmates who were murdered, other guards who were murdered. So just like any prison, this was a violent place.
A lot of killing, too, surprisingly, like murders and suicides. Were there any notable suicides?
Like I said, James Lockhart, and I'm sure there were other suicides that weren't as notable. I mean, when you get yeah, that was loud again.
It's like when we're talking about people, too.
Right.
It was, for people who didn't catch that online, that was like one of the cell doors rattling or a footstep. I couldn't really tell.
And it's not windy out.
No, there's no wind.
I mean, sometimes when it's windy, you may hear the windows or something like that, but it's very still. It's very still outside. It's very still in here.
And we were talking earlier about how some of these suicides were people actually falling from.
There have been, I've heard stories of inmates who have been shoved, over the railings or, doing a swan dive. Actually, I believe it was in this area. I don't want to say it was in this area, but down at the end of the cell block here, there's scaffolding. where inmates used to clean these windows every day. And there was one time where the scaffolding came apart and a couple inmates fell to their deaths. So there were accidental deaths like that here too. There's another story about inmate on inmate where inmate was in a barbershop chair and his throat was slashed by another inmate. They didn't like each other. So you have all those stories, inmate killing inmates, inmate killing guards. And, it's like back then, what did they have to lose? Especially if you're serving a life sentence.
Nothing at that point, really.
No.
It's hard to describe to people online who've never been to a building like this what it feels like to just be sitting here. It's crazy just thinking about the stories that you're telling me and then looking up right now and just imagining that, oh, that happened right there,
Mm-hmm.
or those guys fell to death right over there at the end of this hallway. It's just so strange and cold.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And they're here.
They are.
I don't care what your beliefs are. Crazy stuff happens here that I can't explain, other people can't explain.
So let's talk now about the creepiest part of the building, which is the administration area.
For me,
Yeah.
third floor administration for me, that's one of the most active places and one of the most creepiest.
Mm-hmm.
The central hallway up on the third floor. There's just something about that area.
And what was it used for?
That area, when you talk about, there was the east side and the west side. The west side was actually used as the assistant warden's living quarters. That was their bedrooms. On the east side, that was guest bedrooms where dignitaries from throughout the state or wherever would spend the night, especially back in the early 1900s when they're coming up by horseback or horse and buggy. It's not like they can get on the interstate and be home in an hour or so. So they used to spend the night here. And there's a couple other rooms there that we don't know what they were used for.
Like what?
Well, there's one we call the chair room. In fact, it's the only room besides closets that have no windows. And, we think that it was probably used for storage. I've heard other people say, well, that's where the guards from the midnight shift used to sleep. But none of those have been confirmed. But it is a very active area where people have crazy things happen.
And what kind of things happen to people in, let's say, the chair room?
Well, just Saturday night, which was, 3 days ago?
Mm-hmm.
We had a group of investigators up there. One of the investigators, she was sitting on the chair. We call it the chair room because there's a chair in the middle of the room. And they say if you move it, when you come back, it'll be moved again. So they were up there, she was up there sitting. And she said it felt like something slapped her in the face. So she got up. It kind of freaked her out. She got up and somebody else went and sat in the chair. And they started doing a little challenge, basically saying, we heard that you're bad people here, but you haven't done anything. And immediately when he was talking, she felt this burning sensation on her back. And when they looked on her back, she had two really good scratch welt marks on her back.
Yeah, it's crazy to see that picture because...
That was us.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, oh, now that sounded like a haunted house.
That picture is crazy to look at because it's not a typical scratch mark. It's actually, like you're saying, a raised welt.
Yeah.
But a big red inflamed... There's two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't... even if you wanted to fake that, you couldn't.
Yeah,
it's a welt.
It would be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And that freaked her out. And that was later on in the night, and they left after that.
I can see why.
So, but there's been other things that have happened there. There's been people that have been sitting in the room by themselves, and something will fall in there and scare the crap out of them. We've had other volunteers who have been walking by that room and have heard growling coming from the room. We've had other volunteer walking down the hall during the daytime getting ready to open up for a private investigation when growling was following him. I mean, there was nothing there, but it was following him.
So a lot of volunteers have experiences here, and they're not even trying to seek out paranormal activity.
Right. There's especially the ones during the daytime, who are here who have experiences. The ones who work the paranormal stuff, they seem to have a lot of experiences.
It seems like it's something in this building is trying to talk to somebody.
Oh, and they will talk. Some of my best EVPs I've ever captured are from here. And, I'm a retired police officer, and I've learned that if you treat criminals with respect, sometimes you'll earn that respect back. And this place is no different. When I come in, I'll talk with them. I will say, hey, it's just me, how you guys doing? And at the end, same thing. I'll be, good night, guys. And I have received some great EVPs where they will actually help you out. As an example, I was here one time during a private investigation. This was actually before I was a volunteer here. And one of our investigators asked this question: what happened to the rest of our group? And when they went back and listened to the audio, there was an EVP that says they already left. So you get stuff like that happen. And I found out too that the EVPs here, they will rarely answer your direct questions, but if you're talking with somebody else, asking them a question, they'll butt in.
Really?
Yeah. So
I wonder why.
It's amazing. I mean, we had another one. It was up in the library. One of our investigators. Did you hear something?
I have no idea what that was.
I thought I heard it. That one came from that way.
Yeah, you could hear that on the microphones. It was so loud.
Yeah. Where is Lindsay?
She's in the bathroom. She's not even in here.
Oh.
So the EVPs.
Yeah, we were in the library. There was one of our investigators goes up to the counter. There's a counter there, and there was a phone book. And she goes, what is this? Another investigator says, oh, it looks like an old phone book. When we went back and listened to the audio, right after she says, what is this? An EVP stated, library.
Oh.
It's like they want to help.
Mm-hmm.
But if you provoke them, challenge them, don't treat them with respect, they got the upper hand. And we've had several people who have been, scratched, physically attacked.
What was the most intense, attack that's ever happened here?
There's been volunteers that have been punched. And there was another one, somebody I know was up in the west attic, provoking, and he got attacked, felt a burning sensation in his back, and then when they checked his back, he's got 2 scratches in the shape of a huge cross, or not a cross, an X.
Wow.
So
That's
scary.
It
is scary, but I'm here all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been physically attacked like that. I mean, I've been, touched. I've had the keys pulled from me, but I've never been physically attacked like that.
So
and I don't want to.
What do you think causes the spirits to get angry? Is it just provoking?
They're criminals.
Mm-hmm.
They're inmates. A lot of them committed violent crimes. A lot of them are murderers, rapists. Think of it, how would you react if somebody came to your front door and started challenging you, calling you out? You're going to fight back. This is their home. This is what they've known. And when you have people coming in here challenging them, threatening them, calling them out, they're going to fight back.
So what are the most common types of things that I get visitors report, and not just investigators? What's kind of the overall basic phenomenon that people experience?
There have been apparitions that have been seen by volunteers and guests alike. But cell door slamming, footsteps, and that's mostly, for the investigators who are here. Oh, shh. Oh, that was loud. What the hell?
That was a footstep. Oh, shh.
Oh, that was really loud. That was really loud. It's like you would almost think that there's somebody down there messing with us. But I guarantee you, there's nobody else in the building, just us five.
You'd have to break into prison to get into this building.
Right. And there's nobody going to be coming in here and when it's cold and hiding down there, making noises every once in a while.
That's insane. That was right when you were talking about bangs, footsteps.
That was kind of loud.
It was several. That was very loud. People who are watching this will see that I'm actually getting all these noises that we're hearing. You guys are seeing that area that those noises are coming from. It's down here somewhere. And
right.
It's like a black abyss on that camera. It looks really creepy.
And there's nobody down there.
No, the only people in this entire building are right here.
Right? Yeah. Is everybody here? Right?
Yeah, we're all here.
Yep.
So, why don't you tell me your favorite paranormal experience from the building?
Oh, I would have to say, oh gosh, I've had several of them, but for me, the most, it's hard to choose, but I'll choose the West Attic. We have volunteers and investigators who will actually bring lawn chairs and go up and sit in the West Attic because a lot of times there'll be a light show that will be put on for them. Now, understand the West Attic. It's an attic. There's no windows. There's no light. It's pitch black. You cannot see your hand in front of your face. And people will see a lot of lights. I'm not one of those people. Last year I was up there. There were 9 of us. There were 4 volunteers, and including myself and my wife, and there were 5 guests. They were all seeing these balls of light darting around, and I couldn't see them. I'm getting frustrated. So I decided to move up closer to where the lights were to see if I can see them better. So I moved up. I'm by myself. I got a couple pieces of equipment. I had a REM pod on a piece of ductwork, and across the way I had a proximity sensor that will, if anything goes near it, an alarm will go off and lights will flash. Well, I'm up there, and I'm like, okay, when you guys see these lights, let me know. They're like, here comes one now. Where? I don't frickin' see it. Where is it? Oh, here comes another one down the right side. I'm really getting ticked off. I'm like, you guys are crazy. There's nothing here. I'm here right now. You guys aren't seeing anything. This next ball of light, it made sure that I saw it. And the best way that I could describe it was like a lightning bolt or a shooting star. It was extremely bright and extremely fast. It came from what we call the chapel area, the chapel door. That's how you get into the attic. And it just shot in there and struck my proximity sensor and just exploded in this golden light. And immediately I was overcome in this ice cold. Now, this was summer, and it gets hot up there. And the coldness just enveloped me. So I thought the best plan of action would be to head back to where the living people were, safety in numbers. And then immediately after that, we had like pebbles being thrown at us, and we can hear something walking around us.
So a lot of different activity. You've got everything happening here in the reformatory. You've got footsteps, you've got doors slamming shut, you've got full body apparitions, shadow people, balls of light that transform right in front of you. You've got I mean, everything. Voices, EVPs.
Oh yeah. There's everything here.
And it's all real.
It's all real.
That's what's incredible.
Like I said, I don't care what your beliefs are. You may not believe in this stuff, but spend a little while in this prison, and it may make a believer out of you.
Well, Greg, it was great. We're going to have our next guest on the show now.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
It's getting creepy.
Yeah. Maybe something else will happen.
I'm excited. Okay.
All right.
Okay, so we're back. We took a short break. We're brewing some hot cocoa. I am now sitting with our second guest of the night. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself to everybody. And we're going to get into some more spooky tales from the Ohio State Reformatory.
Hello, I'm Lindsay.
Oh, you can pull that microphone. You want to have it really close.
Like right about here?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
perfect. Okay. So, how long have you been working here at the Reformatory?
5 years now.
And when was your first experience?
It was actually before I started volunteering here. I decided to come here on a day tour, and I was down in solitary, and I had a weird feeling in there, and I saw almost an outline of a guy leaning up against a cell. I was a little freaked out by it, so I turned around and decided not to look at it, and I felt the presence come closer and stand behind me and start to put its hand around my wrist, and it freaked me out a little bit, and I had to walk away from that area. But that was my first indication that this place might actually be haunted.
And what would you say, looking back on it now, has been your most intense experience?
Most intense. Oh my goodness, there's so many, but it was probably actually there was something that happened just recently in November. I don't know if it was definitely up there with one of my most intense experiences. I decided to walk into solitary on my own. I had a brand new recorder and I wanted to try it out. So I started walking down one of the hallways there and was trying to see if I could get it to work, and something wasn't working, so I brought out my flashlight and was looking at it, and then I looked up and I saw this shadow figure that it was over, I would probably guesstimate it probably was like at least 6'3", 6'5". It was very, very tall, just this big dark shadow, and I just stopped and stared at it. And then it started coming towards me at a fast pace, and needless to say, I just turned around and ran out of there. And I'm not one that usually runs away from things like that, but it had that weird feeling like it was just up to no good. So, yeah, that was pretty intense for me.
It seems like the shadow figures here are kind of omens of kind of negativity. I can't even speak. I'm so cold. Negativity. It's like when people have been saying that they've seen these shadow figures, it's usually kind of a spooky experience rather than, I don't know, I've heard a lot of shadow figure stories and people just say, oh, I saw a shadow figure. It wasn't very scary, but it seems like here when people see these shadow figures, they're kind of ominous.
Not all the time. Sometimes if you're just standing there on one of the tiers and looking down through the whole row of cells, oftentimes you'll see guys just peeking their heads out, just these shadow figures of these guys just peeking out. You'll see the head, neck, shoulders and stuff, and it's just like they're just trying to see what's going on. And sometimes we even tried to trigger that by having a few of us go into cells all in a row, and one at a time we all just walk out, kind of trying to simulate possibly how it would have been when they were coming out for roll call in the morning. And by the time you get to the last person, then it's almost like most of the time we'll get a guy peeking his head out like, oh, is it my turn next? So not always are they ominous shadow people.
It's... Oh, my God.
Oh, I thought I heard something too.
Well, that's good to hear, but it seems, I think I'm talking more about in the administration area where there's that. I was up there earlier, and it's definitely got a dark vibe, and you'd imagine that a place like the area that we're in right now, the people watching the video can see, it's just a very dark, huge cell block. You'd think that would be the scary part and not the kind of close quarters, really bare, empty rooms area. It's kind of like just a back office space. But to me, that's, out of all the areas that we went to tonight, just doing a brief tour, that was the weirdest feeling. Not necessarily negative, but just supercharged.
Yeah, you honestly don't really know what you're going to find around here. The energies around here can change so much. It feels like things just move around.
Have you ever had an experience back there?
Up in administration?
Yeah.
Yes, actually. There, just recently, actually, we were up in one of the rooms that's very close to, for all the Shawshank fans, it's near Brooks's room. And we went in there with some guests one night who wanted to check out the room. We closed the door and we started playing some recordings. Not recording. They were trying to make some recordings on their recorders, and they were asking questions, and they were actually getting some responses in there. But they were doing one of the things that I try to ask people not to do, which is provoke, and They were getting some angry responses, and one of them was even a scream on it, which is insane because you wouldn't hear anything until he played it back, and then we heard it. And I was, funny enough, told the next day that one of our guests had been in there with his daughter, and she came out, even though there was no one in that room, saying that there was a mean man in the closet, and there was nobody in there. So I found that strange that happened in there, in that same room where there was a guy screaming on this recorder that we just did not hear.
That's very eerie.
Mm-hmm.
A mean man in the closet?
There's a mean man in the closet.
What a thing to be told.
Uh-huh. Just by a child.
That would freak me out.
Mm-hmm.
Be like, shit, the mean man. Oh
I know, it sounds like something out of a real horror movie there.
Like, actually, The Grudge. There's a mean man in the closet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh,
yeah.
shit. Okay, I'm going away.
If I heard that throat noise in there, I probably would have run out of the building.
Yeah, no, I would not be here today. So we were talking earlier before we started the podcast about some interesting features of the reformatory and kind of discussing the dimensions of the cells and how they vary from block to block. But you were talking about a very interesting part of the prison complex that is the old hospital, and there's a very interesting room in the back that I'd like to kind of talk about a little bit.
Uh-huh. Yeah, a lot of people get confused when they go up there. I tell them I'm taking them up to the hospital, and they get there and they see that it's a library. And I have to remind them that we were open for 100 years, and as different wardens came in and changed things up, they were different things. And that room used to be one of our hospitals. And we have a picture there so that they can see all of what it used to look like with all the beds lined up in there. But then everybody gets intrigued when I tell them, oh, and through this door you'll find the death room. Of course, everybody gets very interested. Ooh, what's that? But it was a tiny room that if you were in the hospital and you looked like you weren't going to make it, they wanted to let you die with dignity. So they would take you into this small room. It has a window, if you can imagine, probably a bed and a nightstand. Nothing too crazy, but just a quiet place where you can die in dignity, where you don't have the eyes of all the other inmates on you the entire time.
And when we were talking, you were mentioning that people have gotten activity in that room recently.
Yes.
What kind of things have people been experiencing?
I kind of get varied reports, but one night I was here and we had a woman here who was a self-proclaimed psychic, and she was in there, and we were in there with her, but she said besides us three that were in there, she just said that the room was full. Like it just felt like it was crammed full of people. And funny enough, she even brought up animals, which I don't really understand where that might have come from, unless there was some sort of animal connection with some of the inmates. I'm not sure on that one. But she said that, there's just this deep sadness there, which I do feel when I walk in there. it's the last stage, before crossing over. So I can't imagine what was going through their minds in there. But you get this strong, sad feeling being in there a lot of times.
I felt that today when we were just taking a look at the. What?
Oh,
Hearing anything? Oh. What happened to it?
oh,
Oh boy.
gotta love technology.
Yeah. So, what do you think we can be? I know you have to get going tonight, so sadly our interview can't be too long. I want to let you get going. But what would you say is your personal favorite paranormal experience that you've had in the time that you've been volunteering and spending a lot of time here?
Oh goodness. There've been quite a few, but I would probably say there are so many experiences. I kind of talked about some when we talked earlier, so I won't revisit too many of those. But the light man that was in solitary was really cool, and hearing those footsteps in solitary. But a lot of my favorite stories actually come from up in the west attic. There's a certain spirit up there that we've all nicknamed Mr. B, because we tried to figure out what his name was, and with dowsing rods, he led us to one of the walls where it's written Britain. So Mr. B kind of just became his name, and he's the one who's apparently self-proclaimed, I'm in charge up here. And usually whenever I go up there, he likes to turn on flashlights. I've been up there and I've whistled and they've whistled back. But probably one of the coolest things up there is, I believe it was Greg told you earlier about the fire that happened in 1930 down at the state penitentiary, and we brought a lot of those inmates here and housed them up there in that attic. Well, during my day tours, even, and this happens at night too, I will bring guests up there and we'll talk about the fire. And after I'm done talking about it, all of a sudden this smell comes up, and it smells like when you've been camping for a weekend and all of your clothes smell like smoke. It smells like that. And the strange thing is it comes and goes. I've been trying to find if there's any sort of logical explanation as to where it's coming from, but I've never been able to find it. And it's so strange because we'll have people in all over the room, and people on one side won't smell it, but then the other people will. But then all of a sudden it's moving this way. It's almost like a person is walking through the group of people, like kind of checking everybody out. And one time I did go up there with some dowsing rods, and I asked them, I said, did it take a long time to get the smell of smoke out of your clothes from the fire at the penitentiary? And they indicated yes. So that's my personal feeling that on what that smell is, but it's still interesting that they can leave that imprint of themselves behind as they walk around.
If only you could capture that somehow.
I know. It's crazy because it doesn't happen every time, but it's been pretty consistent, and it's just ironic that it always happens almost every time after I tell the story of the fire right there at the end. And I was actually thinking about it one day while I was questioning them up there, and I said, guys, I was like, is it okay for me to tell that story? And they said yes. And I thought about it, and I said, you don't want your buddies to be forgotten, do you? And they said yes. So
wow,
it's almost like they appreciate the story being told. And I'm almost wondering if sometimes it's weird because when you're a volunteer here, I feel like they start growing a special connection with you. It's almost like they know that you're trying to help protect the building and everything. And I almost wonder if they're trying to help me out during my tours. They're trying to enhance the experience. And it's like, thanks for the helping hand, guys.
It's very thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hopefully they'll come out tonight.
I hope they do.
The private ghost tour that everyone is hoping that we get, and I'm hoping we get too.
Yes, I hope they decide to come out for you.
Lindsay, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
It's very cold.
It is very cold.
We're going to take one more break and switch out and grab some of that hot cocoa that's brewing. Okay, we're back, guys. It's been about 30 minutes since we were last sitting here, and it's dropped a further 5-10 degrees. Look, my breath, you can see. smells like hot cocoa. Cheers. So, sitting here with our final guest of the night. She's investigated this place many, many times. It's a pleasure to have her on the show, and we'll let her introduce herself to you guys, and we're going to get into the final little bit of spooky story time.
I'm Naomi. I'm with Tracy Ghost Hunters, and I've been here for a couple years now.
And you've investigated the building many times.
Mm-hmm.
What was the most intense thing that you've ever experienced here?
That question. Probably solitaire.
What happened?
I was standing at one end, and it was actually my first time here ever. And I was standing all the way down at one end, and all of a sudden I seen the tallest dark shadow, like a tall man just standing there staring at me. And just the feeling it gave me, it creeped me out, and to this day, I hate that place. But I still go in there. I just don't like it.
The solitary confinement.
Mm-hmm.
What's so bad about it to you?
Honestly, I don't know. It creeps me out. There was another incident in there that I don't care to talk about too much, but I was up on the second tier, and the way I got touched it just made me feel so uncomfortable. I didn't like it at all.
An inappropriate touch.
Yes, very.
And was this prison all men?
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense if someone's in solitary that they might be kind of a creepy person. No offense to you guys.
The feeling I get in there is it's that, yeah.
They're about 10 feet away from us right now. Well, aren't they behind us? This wall right here? Isn't this solitary?
On the other side, yeah.
Yeah, so they're probably listening. Not to freak you out.
They could be, yeah.
I know. So, besides that kind of negativity, you have seen lights, correct?
Oh, yeah, yes.
What's the story behind that?
Well, everybody has experiences that are a little different. When I was in the attic, I would see different color dancing lights, not very big, like a bluish and a greenish color, just dancing along, floating along the walls. And then there was one time I seen a bright white light floating in the air, and it was flickering. To me, it reminds me of when you look at the stars and you see it twinkle, or the tip of a sparkler. And that's what it looked like to me. There was a few of us there. And then it floated a little bit over, and one of the other investigators turned on her flashlight to see it, and it stayed there while the flashlight was on it. It didn't go away. Normally when you turn on the flashlight, things disappear. It stayed there, and it was so bright. But we'll see lights, floating around in there.
Have you seen heard the footsteps?
Oh, yeah.
And doors slamming?
All the time. The cell doors all the time. The footsteps everywhere, even in the attic. I hear them in the attic.
Is there any particular place that you think is more active for those kinds of things, like the footsteps?
Yeah, I would say in the third floor. The third floor and the attic are the two main for the footsteps, to hear them, to see the shadows go back and forth. In the attic, there's a man. You could see him just go pacing back and forth, waiting for you to let him come in or to leave so he can come in or whatever it is he's doing.
In the attic?
Mm-hmm, in the attic.
And just to clarify to people online, in case at the very end of this podcast you're still confused, the attic is the area where after a great fire at another prison, a bunch of inmates were sent to this room. It's got no windows. It's a big stone, kind of a chamber. And a lot of people were actually being housed there with no real protection, no guards doing overly protective things, and who knows what happened in that area because people weren't watching a lot of times.
And there was a lot of them in there.
Yeah, a lot of people that had violent tendencies, and those people were not the reformatory people. They were the prison crowd.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows what they had originally been sent to prison for. And
all different things.
That's a lot of energy in one room. It's very chaotic energy. Like in an area like this where it's a cell block, the people who would have been in these cells probably they don't have that energy. God, I can't even speak. They don't have that same energy as a room would where 30 people were housed.
Totally different.
1, 2 people, 3 even in some of these cells versus 30 in one big room. That's a lot of voices, a lot of movement, people being afraid of other inmates and people bullying each other.
Oh, yeah.
Assaulting.
And you get different energies when you go around through this whole place. You can just feel the difference in them.
What do you think personally is the spookiest spot besides the
Besides solitary?
Solitary.
The 3rd floor.
The 3rd floor
Yep, right
administration?
Just right in the hallway right there.
Why does that speak to you?
I don't know. It always has. It creeps me out. I get voices. I hear voices. It's always got to me.
There is something about that area, though, that just being there myself, you can feel that it's different. Mm-hmm. It's way different than where we are right now.
Just the whole atmosphere and the air itself is different.
It's like it doesn't want you to be there.
Mm-hmm. That's the feeling I get, but we sit there anyway.
I'm about to go. So give me one more experience you've had here while investigating, doing anything.
I can tell you one in the chair room. I don't get a lot of stuff in there, but this one time I was sitting there on the floor. One of the guests was sitting in the chair, and there was 2 other investigators with me, and we had a spirit box going, and we weren't getting anything. So the guy on the team, he said, all right, I'm going to eat this Reese cup. My wife won't let me eat them, so I'm going to eat them. And he said, do you want one? And a voice said, yes. And I said, whatever. You don't even know it's in a Reese cup. And across the thing, it said peanut butter.
Oh.
So, and we got that recorded. So that was pretty cool, I thought, because it answered us.
Did the spirit take a bite of the Reese's?
I don't know. You'll have to ask him that.
I thought that was a bang. It's just the chair. Well, everybody online, it's really, really cold in here. All of our feet are going numb. You can see our breath. We got to tear down this whole podcast setup and head into the investigation. It's almost 1 a.m. right now. But if you want to see the results of that investigation, if you're listening to this right now and watching it, that video is going to be posted already on our channel, the Paranormal Files official channel on YouTube. Just type in Ohio State Reformatory. You'll find it instantly, and you'll see the interviews we did with everybody. You can put faces to the names, and then you'll see what happened to us after this podcast ended, because I'm sure it's going to be a creepy night. Jeff hasn't even been around to oh my God, my voice, around. He hasn't been around to most of the prison. So we're going to have our own creepy tour now, and we're going to get right to it. So thank you to everybody for listening. Thanks for watching. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to everybody who came out tonight, and to the Ohio State Reformatory team and all the different people who've helped make this show possible. I want everyone that's listening out there to remember that we keep it very spooky here on this podcast. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, have a spooky rest of your night or your day. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Boom.
What was that?
Don't forget to head to the Paranormal Files official channel on YouTube to see what spooky things transpired when we turned the microphones off.